Welcome all. This is our very first BridgeBurma seminar series. Today we're here to explore more about international relations versus economics, so that students, high school students like you, or maybe even college students like you, can understand more about the differences between the two and what to do if you want to learn more about the two majors. So today we have invited two panelists. First is Daniel Song from NYU studying bachelor's in economics. And we have Anna Tan from King's College London studying MSc in International Relations. Please go ahead and introduce yourselves. Daniel Song can go first.
Yes, hello, my name is Dan. I am interested in economic theory, developmental research, and econometrics, statistics, up the likes. I have done numerous projects in the SEC, looking into the SEC, more recently at the COVID spread patterns, and my affiliations in NYU are with the Politics Society and Asia Society.
So my name's Anna. I did a science degree for my bachelor's, and then after working for a few years within the international relations development sector, I decided to do a master's in IR for my postgraduate. I've previously worked for the UN Development Program. My interests are mostly within foreign policy and diplomacy, so this is what I've been focusing on within my dissertation topic.
You guys are really that's pretty cool what you guys are doing right now. NYU and KCL, with your own respective to UNDP. So anyways, so one of the things that typically a student would ask, or at least I'm curious about if I were to major, is what are some of the courses that you came across, or some specializations that you have to do during maybe your first few years in college, or as you go explore your own field, what specialization exists as you go deeper? Dan.
Okay. In economics, you have microeconomics and macroeconomics. And those, even then, you can still sort of bifurcate, policy and theory. So it's much more one field is much more, research oriented, and the other is much more industry oriented. Within those fields, though, currently the hottest topics are in, let's see, banking theory, behavioral economics, financial economics. We've seen a rise in quantitative, we call them quants in the industry, like hedge fund managers. Most of them come from mathematical or economics background. So, yeah, those are the fields in economics.
Just putting something out there. It's for eco, it seems like the field itself is really broad. Typically, you can combine with other fields to just basically pretty much dive into any kind of industry or government or research kind of areas. It's just financial and behavioral economics you just mentioned.
Yeah, correct.
So what about Anna, for your IR, how diverse is it, and what kind of courses do exist for students to explore initially about your own specific field?
I mean, even within IR, you have there's been a lot of divergence and subfields, like peace building, conflict resolution, just foreign policy, international development, international law, counterintelligence and security, etc. These are all we've advanced to a point where these are all can be individual master's programs within themselves, or you could take classes within my degree, which is what I've done. So I've specialized in conflict resolution and federalism, that sort of thing, and I've taken regional specializations like China and South Asia and the Middle East. So it's been a mix and match mostly. but there's a lot to explore within IR. So it doesn't necessarily mean when you're doing IR you're just mostly into diplomacy. That's not really what IR is all about. There's a lot more to it.
True. Yeah. Because usually when IR, the name itself pops up, people think about like diplomats. They think about like relationships between countries. Heck, like some people even think like business is actually like IR is part of like business, which I think you guys could potentially answer as we go on more about like these two fields, like some misconceptions afterwards. But for now, like for future direction, right? After you guys like suppose for Anna, you finish this MSc in international relations, like where do you see yourself going in the future? And the same goes for Daniel, right? After your bachelor's degree, because I believe right now you're like a senior in economics. So what a rising senior? So what you gonna do once you graduate, right? I think Anna can go first for this.
So because my thesis is focused on foreign policy and diplomacy, I think I want to stick to it because it's what I'm really passionate about. So mostly I think I want to explore work opportunities within think tanks and also academia, but because the way that I've sort of worked through my career, I've always tried to be doing work experiences simultaneously with my studies. So I think I want to be able to continue that trajectory and have that mix of practice versus academics.
Yeah, you're like pretty much really delved in because me personally, I have also known Anna like for a few years, like I mean actually since I think childhood as friends. And lately she's been doing lots and lots of like how to call interviewing for like a thesis and conferences, like all these kind of like which is pretty funny because this is like diplomat related kind of like activities, don't you think?
Yeah,
But
I'm probably not helping with the typical misconception, but there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it.
definitely. So what about Dan? Like, what about for you, your future direction, where you want to go afterwards?
Right now, things are a little uncertain because of COVID. But if I have the opportunity, I would like to work in a think tank or say a policy institute where you look at economies in Asia, economies in Europe, what the dynamics are, and I want to look specifically at market strategies. Because at some point I would like to open up my own business, and the field that I'm working in right now is just basically that, looking at different markets and seeing which fields are, say, safer than others, which fields are more robust than others. I would like to continue doing that until at a certain point I can, reliably and confidently set up my own business.
That's pretty much like I'm assuming that's like the private sector inside the like inside like I guess let's say industry, right? Like since you're mentioning like think tank or like actually analyzing about which for a company which specific like market is actually safe to like project for the next few years. I don't know, but this seems pretty much like where the big money is, don't you think? So I see. So other question is like, what are like some misconceptions, like common misconceptions people have about your field? Like for me, like I thought like for example, when you talk about like IR or eco, that actually belongs to like a business part of the school inside like university compound. But given that this is like I'm from a tech background, I myself doesn't know anything about eco or IR. So like, can you clear up some like onto the common misconceptions you face within your own field?
I mean, tech is also involved in business in one capacity or another. I mean, the models that I'm using is based off of machine learning, deep learning, AI algorithms. So we have a lot of techies in, say, economics field. We even have a degree called economics/computer science major. It's like a joint major. Yeah. So I don't necessarily think that it's one thing or the other. But anyways, to answer your question, um, you can be a businessman with an economics degree. We have seen a lot of that instances, like happening. But it's also much more than that. With an economics degree, you can also go into government policies. You can go into healthcare, public health policies, right? Or you can go into poverty alleviation. Or if you want to be a little bit more sort of like direct, you can even become an IT analyst if you want to be, right? I'm doing enough data sciencey things to sort of like know how to code in Python and in R. So like it's a very versatile degree in that regard.
I think that point, like at first I didn't know until I talked to you much more about what ego actually is, but I'm starting to realize like ego is a very, very diverse field, like too big to the point where it literally can just morph and join with any other major to get into that specific industry or that specific article line of work, like it doesn't have to be really, in government related kind of like office all the time. Can be like for you, I think you were talking about you're using machine learning at some point, right? Using those kind of like statistics to actually work in tech industries here. That's even a possibility. So that's like pretty cool. What about for like and like what are some of the misconceptions you have for your IR field?
So like we were saying earlier, I think not the one misconception would probably be the fact that everyone who wants to do IR wants to be a diplomat or wants to work in the UN, which is not true. But I'm also being someone who's within the two realms. It's difficult to convince people that, because that's pretty much how I got into IR. My brief work experience with the UNDP definitely convinced me that I wanted to explore IR. But also initially I started out wanting to get more into peace building and conflict resolution, but ended up in this quintessential foreign policy diplomacy realm, which has been pretty fun and I've been really enjoying it. But at the same time, you don't have to do diplomacy or you don't have to work in the UN. And that's not the only option that IR has for you. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to it. You could get into academia, and you could get into public policy, international law. I know quite a handful of people who would go into international humanitarian law, or international commercial law or development after doing IR. So there are a lot more fields than you think there is.
Well, so would you say typically if a student or someone wants to major in IR, they'll be dealing with national-wide country kind of like issues rather than local issues, or like is that also another misconception?
I mean, like things like public policy, for instance, usually go into domestic sort of field, because then you're looking at health policy or social policy within like public affairs. But it's also applicable in different countries. So people can do NMSc in public policy, but they eventually end up in organizations like UNDP, for instance, and then get into public policy or think tanks. So, but mostly international relations is supposed to be something that is encompassing of what's applicable to many different countries, not just one.
Fair point. Fair point. Okay. All right. So like I guess the last thing that I guess we would like to ask for people for high school students and Burmese like high school students, like what if they were to be interested in exploring more about IR economics, what advice do you have for them, right? And what are some ways they can get their hands on what it feels like to be like majoring in IR or eco before they even go to college, maybe even after they go to college? What are some of the things that they can do for that? Dan, maybe?
Yes, that is an amazing question. Um, Even for high schools that teach economics, normally they do not sort of prepare the students for the rigor of economics you're going to do in college and university. I mean, naturally, right? However, on YouTube, MIT has this open courseware program. They put every single lecture that they, sort of like teach in their courses for, intro to microeconomics or macroeconomics. They would have the entire semester's worth of classes on that website. And the same goes for linear algebra, which will come in very, very handy if you're ever getting into economic research or any quantitative work you're going to do. So in that regard, learning is not just watching lectures, you also need to do them. But I think watching these lectures would give you a very, very good grasp on what is expected of you in college. So I would really heavily recommend getting into the MIT OCW.
Well, we'll put that link down here within the post if there is MIT OCW. Okay, or some resources related to eco. What about for Anna?
Mostly, I would say start with volunteering and looking out for internships. But internships are very difficult to acquire, especially if you're a high school student. So mostly try to start building up your CV through volunteering and start reading up about basic IR theories, and then look up on the history of UN and just start exploring.
Yeah, that sounds pretty like sound advice, because I believe you started your passion from UNDP, which I think is a like internship, or is it volunteering? I'm not sure.
So volunteering and internship, so it was both.
Yeah, so that's how you started. So people can also get, and that was in Burma too. That wasn't like not like that was not in UK, right? That was like in Burma. So
no, it was in Burma. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, you guys can get started, and we'll put like resources down in the after the video, and we'll put it like down there in the comment section or like the post. But regardless, if you have questions for these two people, they are still our mentors on BridgeBurma, so you can still reach them out through our appointment system. And lastly, I think that's pretty much it for our like IR versus economics. And next week, not really next week, but like on July 16th, we'll be also releasing tech series or like a tech webinar about like field like computer science, computer engineering, data science, and also we'll be talking more about that. And that will be episode 2 of BridgeBurma Seminar Series. Thank you so much, and that's it. Stay safe and happy.